Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, I got a little project I need to work on. This is actually something that's been an issue that I've been kind of battling with for, well, ever since I moved into the house. When I bought this house, it included a very elaborate sprinkler system. You got to remember, I'm on about 1/3 of an acre of property, and so there's a lot of area that needs to be watered. And there's a very sophisticated sprinkler system. If you watched any of my previous vlogs, you know that I've tapped in and punched through some of the sprinkler lines on several occasions. And it's out here, and I've used it, and it's been very useful. But there's been one problem since the very beginning. When I first moved into the house, I just assumed that since there's a timer that controls everything, that the timer was doing fine and was taking care of everything and had been left going by the previous owners, and I didn't really have to worry about it. Well, after about a week or so, I started noticing that things in the yard started getting a little dry and dying out a little bit. And I started wondering, is the sprinkler system itself working? Well, it turns out it wasn't. For some reason, the timer wasn't working, and so the sprinklers were never going off, or going on and running the cycle. Now, I could manually start them, and that wasn't the problem, and it would run just perfectly, but I couldn't get the timer to work. And I've looked at it on several occasions and not really had a whole lot of luck with it. But I'm going to have to at some point figure out what's going on there and get that straightened up so I can, do any traveling if I'm ever going to do that. Because if I'm going to be gone here for a week or 2 weeks doing some vlogging or going to California or something like that, and the sprinklers don't work, I'm going to come home with a bunch of dead plants. So I'm going to take another stab at this thing, and I might actually have to do something that all men are loath to do. I might actually have to read the directions. Ugh. Yeah, there's Nibble's new little favorite place to hang out right now. Look at that face. Alright, so this is the controller here, and the interface isn't really that difficult to operate. You can set your different modes here, the date and time, when you want things to start, how long you want each of the stations to run, and all sorts of other things. It's a really sophisticated thing, and this controller is capable of controlling up to 12 stations. In fact, this thing is so complicated that I don't even completely understand how the whole thing works. I mean, generally, sprinkler controllers are pretty simple because you just have a bunch of anti-siphon valves, which are basically just valves that turn on and off the water, and they're usually hardwired to the controller, and that makes it really easy to, figure out where things are, make modifications if you need be. But I think parts of this thing are controlled by radio, so there's no wire going to the individual anti-siphon valves. And the truth is, I don't even know where most of the valves are in this house. On the sprinklers that I built in my house in California, the anti-siphon valves were all in one place in the yard, and they were very, very close to the sprinkler controller, and there was just a wire that ran to them. So it was very easy to, reconfigure them, to change them, to make modifications or repairs if need be. But on this one, it isn't really quite the same way. And I, like I said, have not had a whole lot of luck in terms of making this thing work. Like I said, I can run it manually. You flip the thing over here to manual and go back to run again, and it will run the whole cycle by itself. And that's how I've basically kept the yard alive for the past year and a half, a little bit more than a year and a half, and that's been fine. But like I said, if I'm going to ever go on a vacation and be gone for more than 2 days, especially in the summer where it's almost necessary you run the sprinklers every day, if I do that, I'm going to come back with a bunch of dead plants. So I seriously got to figure out what's going on in this and why I can't get this thing to run. Now, as I said before, I've fiddled around with this thing a couple of times, and I think I've got it all configured right. I've got the clock set so it knows what the date and time is. I've got it set to when I want the timer to run. I've got all the valve run times set correctly as far as I can tell. I mean, when I run it manually, it runs, and it runs each station properly. And I get the right amount of time on each one. But like I said, for some reason, I can't get the timer to to run automatically. So like I said, I'm going to dig into the manual and see what happened. Now what I ultimately started doing was looking at the website of the company that manufactures the controller. I was hoping maybe there'd be like a tech support number I could call and talk to somebody and just see if they can, you know, figure out exactly what it is that's happening and why something isn't happening and what it is that isn't happening and what I can do to fix that. But a lot of companies now these days, they don't want to talk to their customers anymore. What they're doing instead is they're doing frequently asked questions on the internet, and unfortunately the frequently asked questions are the kind of things like, is it plugged in? Do you have the battery in? Did you turn it on? It's like, yeah, I mean, I know what the answer to all those are, because if any of those things were an issue, it wouldn't run manually. So you know, it's beyond that, and they don't go deep enough into the real issues to help me figure out what this is, you know, what's going on here. But I did find an owner's manual for the thing, so I've downloaded that, and I'm going to sit down and read that, and I'm going to see if that helps. Yeah, the yard is definitely starting to bounce back. It's definitely starting to turn into spring again. These are my hydrangeas. I thought honestly that I'd lost them over the winter, but just like the ones I had in my house in California, they seem to die off in the winter and then bounce back really well in the spring. So I kind of cut down all of the old stalks, and I think the hydrangeas are on their way back. So that's a good thing. It's definitely starting to look a little bit more like spring here. Even the annuals I put in the little pot on the former tree stump are doing well. It's ironic too. We had a kind of a cold snap here a couple months ago, and the plant that was supposed to be, that was in the middle, that was supposed to come back year after year after year, that didn't survive it. But these things are doing well. So I don't know. We'll wait until these things kind of begin to fade, but they're not anywhere near that right now. They look really nice, don't they? It's starting to look a little like spring. Definitely want to keep it alive with a functioning sprinkler system, right? And this is one of the plants I planted in the front yard last year, and it's doing well. In fact, it looks like we got some flowers going to be popping here pretty soon. There's another one here. It seems to be doing well. And my holly plants that I planted, they're all doing very well here. It's like I said, it's definitely starting to look like spring. And this is Texas lilac. This is something I planted in the front yard right after they tunneled under my house to do that sewer line. They tore out a couple of plants that were here, and this is the second winter now that this thing has made it. And every year I keep thinking I killed it off and it's dead, but every spring it comes back and starts growing again. So this was a good choice for here. And right now it's currently about 7 feet tall. It was a tiny little plant when I put it in there, so it's doing well. And this is my purely purple crepe myrtle plant that I put in, and it's doing well. Like I said, it kind of dropped all of its leaves in the winter, and it looked dead, but it's definitely coming back. So like I said, we got a lot of nice things in the yard. I want to keep it alive, but we got to get this sprinkler system taken care of first. And that brings us back to this thing. I've been through the manual. The manual doesn't really tell me anything I don't already know. I mean, you know, basically these things are pretty simple. You set the current date and time, you set the time you want the sprinkler valves to run, and you set how long you want each of them to run, and then when the timer comes up, it just runs all the valves in order. Now, I've noticed that this thing has 3 programs, what they call channel A, channel B, and channel C. And currently it's on channel C, and like I said, when I run it manually it works, but it doesn't work. So what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to try activating channel A and see if I can make channel A work. Maybe that's all it's going to take, and then we can reset everything and wait and see what happens at 6 o'clock and see if they come on their own, and hopefully maybe that'll solve my problem. Alright, so I reset the timer on program A and set it to go off at 6 o'clock, and 6 o'clock came and went and nothing has happened. So I'm still not sure what's going on. I'm going to spend a little bit more time thinking about this, and maybe we'll have to revisit this vlog at a later date. Unfortunately, that's been happening a lot lately. I'll start a vlog and get to some sticking point that I gotta stop and think about and figure out how I'm going to resolve, and That's part of the reason why I'm kind of getting a little behind on some of these vlogs. I got a bunch of partial vlogs shot, but you know, unfortunately, you know, you run into some hurdle that you can't always fix, and you end up having to stop and think about it. I'm sure I'll figure this out at some point, but at this point we're going to have to wait and see what happens. So it's the next morning, and appears maybe I was more successful than I originally thought. I was in the shower just a few minutes ago, and right in the middle of the shower, the water pressure dropped like significantly. I started thinking, what happened? Did the city do something with the water supply? Did the sprinklers go on? Did everyone in the neighborhood turn on something, you know, and have the water pressure drop? And all of a sudden it dawned on me, it's 6 a.m. I wonder if I set the timer wrong and either got the timer or the start times wrong, and it went off at 6 a.m. instead of 6 p.m. And I thought, okay, maybe that's good news. So got out of the shower when I was done, and when I turned off the water, I could still hear water running through the pipes. And apparently that's what happened. I got the timer set up wrong. It is going off at 6 a.m., not 6 p.m. And we did actually fix the problem. Now, I'm still not sure why Program C doesn't work. But moving it to Program A seems to have worked. And so we are back in business. So yep, the sprinkler heads are working on their own, so that is really good news. As I said earlier, that's one of the issues that I have to resolve in terms of being able to go anywhere. You know, I've been running the sprinklers manually, and that's fine, but you got to be home to run them manually all the time. It'd be nice to know that we can count on the timers, so it seems like we resolved this issue. So that was interesting that the the reason the timer didn't work on Program A was because I had AM and PM mixed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the timer, figure out which it is. Is it the clock that's off, or was it the start time that's off? Because if I told it it's 6 a.m. when it's really 6 p.m., you know, on the clock, or if I programmed it to go off at 6 a.m. instead of at 6 p.m., you know, I got to figure out which one is right and correct the one that's wrong. But I think we maybe get this thing fixed up, and that's a big issue if I'm going to ever do any traveling, is being able to count on the fact that my sprinklers will keep my yard alive. So I think that's all that I have for today. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.